I'm David Skinner, and this is the CRE Coach, where together you and I are lifting the hood on commercial real estate. If you want to be an effective negotiator, you have to know what your audience is motivated by. The TRIC, or the TRIC, of lease negotiations determines each deal: term length, rental rate, improvements, and credit of the tenant. Each of these facets of the lease change in proportion with each other. If a landlord gets the T, I, and C they want, they'll flex on R. If the term is what the landlord wants, there are a few tenant improvements needed with great credit history, the landlord will likely get more competitive on the rent. All these factors fluctuate in proportion with each other, and all landlords will make different leasing decisions based on what they're motivated by. Take a look at our video called the TRIC of Lease Negotiation, where we go into more detail about this concept. Most landlords are motivated by one of the following three things: cash, return on investment, or net rental rate. The first landlord is cash driven. They may run a local business and have excess real estate as a byproduct of their business, or maybe they're a local landlord with a small bank account, or maybe they're simply very conservative and sensitive about spending cash on their real estate. This type of landlord is going to be motivated by little to no tenant improvement work, looking for as close to an as-is deal as they can get. These landlords also may not have their own property manager, so they'll be more motivated by tenants with good credit rather than maximizing on every penny of the lease, because they'll likely want to minimize the chance that they personally need to run around and collect rent checks. In some cases, a landlord like this may execute a deal that doesn't maximize the return if there's no hassle and no cash needed to get the deal done. And they may compromise on the rental rate and the term length in order to do that transaction. The second landlord is return driven. They could have a small or large portfolio, but either way, they have more access to cash and are able to complete tenant improvements. They tend to be more flexible than the first landlord in some areas and can contribute to a tenant improvement allowance depending on what they need to do to get the tenant moved in. They're more focused on the return on investment and may be more willing to work with a tenant who's financially sound but perhaps needs some creativity to do the deal. This landlord has more of an appetite for flexibility on tenant improvements and the term, but the numbers will all need to work. They would do a deal at a low rent if the numbers make sense, or they would spend money and improve the space and then charge a higher rent. And the third landlord is driven by maximizing the net rent. This landlord may manage a fund of some kind or is in the buy, invest, and flip business. They're motivated by maximizing the net operating income, which is simply your total revenue minus your operating expenses. This means that the term and the net revenue are the most valuable factors to a lease, and things that don't affect the base rent number are the most easily given up. For example, landlords like this would much rather compromise by writing a large check for tenant improvements at the beginning of the lease term than lowering the base rental rate. Another typical concession by a landlord like this would be a period of free rent at the beginning of a lease term in lieu of a lower base rent, so that when the building is fully occupied, they can flip the property at a multiple of the value of the leases for the purpose of refinancing. I've seen some cases where a landlord will give up to 9 months to a year of free rent on a long-term lease at a high rate for this exact reason. Know if your landlord is driven by cash, returns, or rents, and then argue your case in a way that gives you the most leverage to get the best deal. I'm David Skinner, and this is the CRE Coach, where together you and I are lifting the hood on commercial real estate.